Hello, and welcome to Wellness Wednesday with 3W. Wellness Wednesday is sponsored by 3W Medical for Women, a nonprofit medical clinic offering free of charge or low-cost reproductive health services to women in the Seattle area, regardless of income or insurance status. 3W does not profit off of the reproductive health choices women make. The information shared in this podcast is the opinion of the speaker or speakers. Medical information is not intended as individual medical consultation, but for general education only. Always consult your own health professional for personalized advice regarding medical decisions. And if you're in the Seattle area, consider making an appointment to consult with us. I'm Helen Nguyen, CEO and co-founder of 3W Medical for Women and the host of today's podcast. Hi there, Wellness Wednesday with 3W listeners. Thank you so much for joining us today. For all of our faithful listeners from the very beginning, I just want to say a big thank you. Thanks for hanging in there. We kind of didn't know what we were doing in the beginning, but I think that we're in a really good groove now. And it's thank you to the 3W team for making this happen. But thanks for joining us again. Today, we're talking about a pretty tough topic. It seems like our podcasts just keep getting tougher with the topics that we're choosing. But I think that also means that we're hitting something that's really unique, that's really prevalent in our community. And I'm just really excited to continue to talk about these topics because we really just want to serve. We want to serve the community. And even if these topics make us uncomfortable, it needs to be talked about. There's education behind it, and there are people hurting from it. So today's topic is the prevalence of women in their sexual addiction to pornography. And I have with me a wonderful young woman. I can say that now that I'm in my 30s. Her name is Rachael Killackey, and she is going to share her story and her journey with addiction to pornography and the effects that it had on her life. We're gonna walk through some stats that are pretty alarming. This is not in any way to shame or judge or put anyone down if you're engaging in pornography right now. This is not that type of podcast. It's not that type of conversation. This is Rachael sharing her story and her vulnerability and putting herself out there because Rachael and I were talking before this, and it's such a shameful, silent kind of addiction, especially for women. And I just feel like it's time to open wide this door and talk about it really candidly. Because with any type of addiction or type of engagement like this, there are pros and cons to it. So I just wanted to highlight this because we've been observing more and more patients come through our doors with these types of questions, sharing with our medical providers, which I'm so grateful for. Thank you for doing that and trusting us with this. But sharing with our medical providers their engagement in pornography and how it is affecting women physically. It's not just a mental thing. It's a physical thing. It's a spiritual thing. So here's Rachael. And I'm just so grateful to be connected to her. So, Rachael, I'm going to just get started. So, for you, when did it start for you? When did you get exposed to pornography? It was a pretty young age, I believe, correct?
Yeah. So, I had some unwanted experiences from my childhood that kind of piqued my curiosity and made me desire a sense of control when it came to sexuality. And I think that's often the case too. I know with the women I work with, that's a large percentage is women seeking pornography as a way to kind of reconcile with some experiences that happened to them as children that they didn't want. So I was first exposed to pornography at 13. Wow. And it was actually written. It was erotica. So it was, which I think is important to define because a lot of women actually find themselves first addicted to written pornography, and then progressing into possibly watching. But I was first exposed at 13 and struggled heavily from ages 13 to about 19. So about 5.5 years total. So that was 8th grade to my first year of college, basically.
Wow. I see. That's something so eye-opening for me. I didn't even consider erotic literature as porn.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because a lot of people don't, but pornography by definition is the extraction and portrayal of a sexual act for the sake of entertainment and arousal, right? When you think about that, that can be written, that can be visual, that can be just an image, that can be a video, that can be multiple, it can be audio. There's audio as well, solely audio. So I think it comes in many different forms, and we have to be honest about all the forms that are out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I didn't even consider that. God, it makes me think back of the things that I've read in my teen.
Right. It's everywhere.
Yeah. And it's just like, okay. All right. So, I, to prepare for our conversation today, I just did some quick Google searches, and I ran across, Google, and I ran across the American Addiction Center, and they had like a whole, I want to like pages dedicated to women and their addiction to porn. And it said 76% of females between the ages of 18 to 30 years old watch pornographic material.
Yeah.
Do you, with the work that you do with women around our country, is that true? Is that the kind of the age range that you're seeing?
Yes, a high concentration of our women are in that 18 to 30 age range. I was actually telling somebody that earlier. That's a huge part of our work. But I think, my youngest small group member is 17 and my oldest is 71.
Wow.
Like we have women who are married. We have women who are single. We have women who are teenagers. Obviously working with minors in this topic is a little bit different, but we have women who are in their 60s and 70s and have seen the evolution of the pornography industry and have not been able to get help. And so I think we have this wide age range, but we're seeing a massive incoming from that 18 to 30 range for sure.
Wow.
So I agree with that. It's a staggering statistic. It really is.
It kind of like, made me back up and go, whoa, that's a big number. And we also have to consider these are just reported numbers. They're not capturing people that are not comfortable sharing that kind of stuff. So it could even be higher.
And it could mean you watched it once. It could mean you're an addict watching frequently. It can mean all sorts of things, but it also makes you wonder why people don't think this is a thing for women. When you see statistics like that, you're like, how on earth? And I joke around that at parties, like, when you have the regular conversation, you're holding the beer and you're like, oh, what do you do for work? And I'm like, oh, I help women recover from porn addiction. What do you do? It's like people either run away from me or like have a lot of questions, but more often than not, I get that like, oh, nice. I didn't know women struggled with that.
Oh my
it's
gosh.
like a very, there's a very limited understanding of
absolutely
of that. So statistics like that, you wonder why,
Yeah. And it wasn't kind of on my radar. I always thought it was a guy's issue, and it wasn't on my radar or even my staff's radar until recently, until we are seeing the effects of it, on our predominantly female population of women that we serve. It just kept coming up in conversation, and because we give an hour of an appointment, we're not just treating the issue that they come in with. We're able to peel back and say, okay, what's the bigger issue here?
What's the motivator?
Yeah, that contributes to now a physical disease or a physical issue. So for you, Rachel, you said it started at a very young age. Now, how did it progress for you? You started reading literature, but did it start now going on like Pornhub or something? Like where did it go? And this is part of why I struggled to admit that I was addicted, is because I never accessed a porn site ever. It was all on YouTube or other video streaming sites. Wow.
I'm not kidding. Yeah. And the age restrictions on YouTube are so easy to bypass.
Oh, yeah.
But it was all there's deeply harmful and pornographic content on just regular old social media platforms. I have friends who would get software that could block pornographic sites on their computers, and their addictions would continue because they could access it through Twitter and Facebook. So I think the progression of my struggle looked like first just literature and I found it through Pinterest. It was fan fiction, and that was how my first exposure happened. And so I could easily access it through Pinterest, and then it progressed into videos. And I think that's typical. That's what I've seen a lot of in women that I work with, is something about the literature allows us to use our imagination, be creative, like all of those things that women love to do when we're thinking about relationships, especially, you know, there's a certain investment that literature allows you to have. And so I think that's why it's very, very capturing of the female mind, especially in a pornographic sense. But yes, I did progress to videos. And yeah, again, accessed it without ever touching a porn site, which is really horrifying. But that's what made me think, oh, I'm not actually struggling, is because I wasn't on the regular sites.
Yeah. When did you realize that it was a problem?
I think, it was gradual for sure. I remember being a sophomore in high school and having this massive argument with a guy in my class on whether or not porn was ethical. And I, had a moral argument with this guy. And I remember being so angry and recognizing afterward, like, where's my anger coming from? And that I was, in a sense, directed towards myself. And it took me a few years to kind of grasp that. I think when I really saw how detrimental it was is when I recognized that, like, lust doesn't have boundaries. It doesn't respect the fact that somebody's your friend or your friend's boyfriend or somebody's father or your sister. It doesn't respect, like, boundaries. It doesn't respect the relationships you're establishing. And so I really recognized it was a problem when first I wanted to stop and I couldn't, which is characteristic of addiction. And second, when I became very, very uncomfortable with the thoughts I was having and the people I was having them about. It was affecting how I perceived men in particular, because, my attractions are to the opposite sex. And so that was where my lust was primarily directed. And yeah, I became so saddened by the way I was objectifying men, and the way I was perceiving my own sexuality. And that's when I really recognized, okay, this is a problem. I can't quit. And it's to my detriment that I can't quit,
Yeah. Yeah. And at what age did you realize that? Did you say sophomore year in high school, or was
I was about 17 when I really came into that knowledge. Okay. And I actually went out my senior year. One morning I just woke up because I was accessing through my computer and then also through my smartphone. And I woke up one day my senior year and went out and just bought a flip phone for myself. I was like, I'm so sick of this. And that really helped. Yeah, that was good. It was like a good practical step for me. But yeah, I think the technology obviously gives us so much more exposure, and internet pornography is pretty rampant. But because before that before I had my own computer, I was homeschooled, right? I was a homeschooled Catholic kid. So when I hear from parents, like, oh, it would never be my kid, I homeschool my kids, I'm like, y'all, let's have a real moment here. Yeah. If there is any sort of computer or phone, like smartphone in your home, right, it's a risk. Yeah. It's a risk. And so I think, before that I was using like a family laptop that I shared with my siblings for homeschooling. Yeah. And then I got my own laptop. And do people even call them laptops anymore? I'm saying laptop and realizing, I'm like, is that a thing?
I don't know. You're in your 20s. You tell me.
I was homeschooled, right? I don't know anything. But so I was using a family laptop, and then I got my own and got a smartphone at 16. That was when the iPhone was really hitting. And so I think we have to be honest about our technology use too. I'm kind of bridging into a whole different rant, but I think that's, I was about 17 when I really came to grips and started to push back. That was when I really really started.
Did people in your life know that you were
No.
struggling with this, or did
No.
you ever try to
Yeah.
bring it up with folks and they just didn't get it because there was this stereotype that you're a homeschool kid, so
Yeah.
it doesn't affect you?
Yeah. And I wasn't homeschooled at that point, but it was not, I think this is the case for a lot of faith-based upbringings, right?
Mm.
It was very much like there was a lot of influence from purity culture of I would go to youth conferences or retreats and we would be separated. The guys would get the porn talk. The girls would get a modesty talk.
Wow.
Right. Or an emotional purity talk. Right. And so I think there was this mindset to me of I'm struggling with a male struggle. Like there's no context for me to place this in these experiences and this struggle basically, or this attraction that I have to this thing that I really don't want in my life. And that's having a negative effect on me. So I didn't feel like I could really say anything. And I didn't, nobody was starting that conversation. And so my parents spoke about it, but primarily as a male struggle because that's what they understood. And they did the best they could. And I have a really, wonderful family and loving parents. And so they in no way created or intentionally created shame or anything around this. But I did end up telling my best friend in high school when I was a senior. And her response was extremely loving and very merciful. And she had never really struggled with that herself, but she just responded with such compassion. And that really gave me courage to share in the future. I have too many women who come to me just so damaged from people's reactions when they finally try to share. It can be incredibly shaming. And if they get rejected on that first share, it can be really damaging in the long run.
Yeah, I can just imagine that that's such again, it's being portrayed as such a male-driven issue. And that's why it's so important that we're having this conversation right now. And so that kind of ties into the next question I had was like, what are some misconceptions about women in pornography use? Like what are some things that we can break? Let's break these stereotypes right now. What would you suggest first?
Well, I think it comes first from a conception that women are not as sexual as men. Right. Which was a cultural saying that was just kind of, which number one, it leads us to treat men like animals, which I don't think is fair either. And that's unhealthy on both ends.
Right.
But I think whether just in culture at large or in certain church cultures, the language became, men are the sexual beings and women are the gatekeepers. Women
That's a
don't
lot of
struggle.
pressure.
It's so much pressure, right? Like, why did we do this?
I know.
What are we doing? Yeah. So I think it just created, it came from this creation of women not experiencing sexual desire very prominently, which I don't think it's that we experience it less than men. It's that we experience it differently. We are just as sexual as men, and we just experience it in a uniquely feminine way, and in a way that only women can. So I think a lot of misconceptions about women's pornography use comes from that. Why would women ever even seek this out if they're not even sexual to begin with?
Yeah. So how does pornography lead to issues with masturbation?
Yeah. So, and it's interesting for me because I work obviously with, dozens and dozens of women at this point, where masturbation is actually the primary issue for them and not even pornography consumption.
Okay.
They're addicted to self-pleasure. And sometimes there are several different avenues that can lead there. Obviously, pornography lends itself to desiring arousal and desiring completion, right? And the release. And I never had too much accompaniment of my addiction to pornography with masturbation. That was not where my struggle was primarily. But I have women who are solely addicted to that, that I work with. And it can be sought out of stress and like a desire to self-regulate emotion or self-regulate stress. It can be just a desire for pleasure. It can be multiple things, but pornography typically will escalate to the point of accompanying with masturbation. And it's because of the nature of the thing.
Yeah. And Rachel, for our listeners out there, Rachel runs this amazing ministry, actually. And Rachel, can you talk a little bit more about that? Because then it can give folks a little bit more context of, what you're talking about, not just because you've gone through it yourself. I'm sorry, folks. I should have started with that. But
they're like, who's this lady?
Yeah.
And
how does she know all these things? But can you just give us like a quick nutshell of like, how many women are you working with on a daily basis? And I'm sure it's helping you heal as well as these women, but I just think it's a fantastic model.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I run an organization called Magdala, and it is focused on helping women and accompanying women in their journey to recover from pornography, masturbation, and other unwanted sexual addictive behaviors. So we run virtual small groups and with a curriculum that we've developed. And so we're not a 12-step group. We're not like Sex Addicts Anonymous or something like that. We are kind of our own thing, which is nice. But yeah, we're faith-based. So we're Catholic, but I get women from all different faith backgrounds, which has just been a joy. And so we run primarily our small groups, and we have over 30 in operation now. We started last March. So March of 2021 is when I got like a little kick to the pants to go ahead and start it from somebody who, was very trusted in the anti-porn kind of industry. And he was like, this is such a need, and you have a story and you have a passion for this, and you need to go ahead and do it. And I was like, okay. And I, went on Squarespace and designed a website and was like, I'll do a blog and podcast and start virtual small groups. And I had run an in-person recovery group at my university when I was about a year or two into my own recovery, or into sobriety. And so I felt like I was in a solid place, and just the conversation was not happening for women. So I started an in-person recovery group and ran that for a year. And then, went into full-time ministry work after getting my master's. And then, now I do this, and it's a joy. Amazing. But we have, I think last week we hit over 400 women reaching out for help. So that doesn't mean they're placed in a small group, but over 400. I get probably 7 to 10, sometimes a dozen reaching out a week. I personally lead 3 virtual small groups. I'm obsessed with these women. Like it's like sometimes like my husband like waits for me to come out of like running a group, because I'm just like yeeted, I'm just like, let's go. Like I love encountering women in a place where they feel wounded and they feel ashamed of themselves. And I love seeing women band together to become healthy. That's the joy of what I do. I think it's just women linking arms and being like, hey, you're being lied to about yourself right now. You believe lies about yourself. I believe lies about myself. If it's not true for you, it's not true for me. And we can do this together. And it's so beautiful. Women are so good at creating community. And so I love the community that they're creating over there. But so it's called Magdala. We're here for anybody who needs us, but
that's so beautiful.
It's been a wild ride. It's been a wild ride.
Oh, you're just in the beginning. Trust me. So, wow, that's beautiful. And I love the way you talk about it in the way that it's like, it's women supporting women. It's walking alongside each other and partnering each other's well-being, holistic care, right? It's exactly what 3W tries to do here, on the medical side of things. But again, because we provide space and time to really dig into these issues that are so multi-layered and it affects us in so many different ways. We're complicated creatures, us women. And you know what? It's a good thing. I'm sorry. But, well, you know what? Yes, I'm not sorry. And how, since your organization, it's still in that startup phase. Where do you see it going? These women, how do you know when they've graduated, quote unquote, from their addiction? Do they share that with you, or is it a lifelong struggle? Kind of like for alcoholics and those that are chemical dependency kind of folks, it's a lifelong thing. Do you see this addiction kind of just being one and done once they've realized this and gone through the healing process like you have, or is this something lifelong? And I feel like I know the answer to that, but if you can just affirm it or confirm it.
Sure, of course. I think it's very individual.
Okay.
But I'm in school to become certified in sex addiction therapy. And it's interesting seeing, because I come obviously from primarily a ministry background. It's wonderful to be immersed in a background that's psychological. And I mean, I'm in school with a bunch of social workers and therapists, and they are just lovely human beings. And I love learning from them. I just like read all their posts because we're in school online, and just like, oh my gosh, it's a whole world that I'm so excited to know more about. But in the psych world, you know, there's the ownership of addiction, like the identification and admitting, like, I am an addict, you know, it's very like, you know, very AA of like, you know, hi, my name is Rachel. Hi, Rachel. You know, And we actually don't take that approach. And I definitely think there's a value to admitting this is where I am, and this is going to be a sensitive place for me. For the rest of my life. This is going to have to be a place that I am vigilant. And this is where I do think being faith-based helps us, is I have a redemptive mindset going into my own story and going into my own work. And I think you can have that redemptive mindset, whether or not you come from a faith background, is like, is my woundedness and my brokenness something that I have to be afraid of for the rest of my life? Or is it a sign of a new strength that I can come into? Is it a sign of a place that I'm supposed to overcome and be especially gifted in, experience new victory and new life in? And for me, in my own journey, I had to, the biggest battle wasn't overcoming addiction. It was overcoming shame. It was overcoming shame that just like absolutely crippled my identity as a woman. And I think a lot of therapists say that, is that the biggest battle, if you're dealing with a sexual addict in therapy, whether man or woman, is not the addiction, it's the shame. And I definitely believe that is that redemptive mindset helps you overcome this belief of like, I am bad, I am dirty, I need to be afraid of myself, I need to be afraid of my sexuality. And so personally, like when I'm talking about myself, for a while, I would say I'm in recovery still. And I'm 5 years sober now. So 5. Should probably know my exact date, you know, but even that, you know, I don't, I choose not to say that anymore, that I'm in recovery. I say I am recovered because I just truly believe that, healing is possible. And many people do kind of have on and off struggles for the rest of their lives. And I need to be prepared to fall into that again, you know? And that's something that I'm vigilant about, is like, what could possibly lead me back there? I need to be aware of those triggers, aware of the things that are sensitive for me, aware of those wounds that led me there. I don't know if that makes much sense, but I just don't think we should identify with our flaws. Like, we should allow them to be there, be present to them, and non-judgmentally receive them, you know? But I definitely don't identify with it. And I think that's possible for all women. Quite frankly, somebody was asking me earlier, because I'm giving a talk tomorrow at a retreat, and they were like, how do you do that? Like, how do you stay so like composed and professional when you're talking about this super embarrassing thing? And I just kind of, when I'm talking about it now, it feels like a drop in the ocean of my whole life. It really does. And I think we can feel that way about our experiences of brokenness, our experiences of shame. We can eventually look at them and say, like, you know what, I've grown so much and come so far that's just a drop in the ocean of who I am. You know, it's a stroke on the canvas. It's there, but there's a whole beautiful picture here that I don't have to be afraid of. I can embrace, I can be happy about. And, you know, that's a part of it.
See, Rachel, I think that's why some energy led us to each other, because that's so beautiful the way you just put it. You know, one of our we have 3W, I'm going to go on a tangent, but 3W has this like other logo where it's like a bunch of colors in the background mixed together. And that's why I gravitated towards it, because of where 3W started and why it started. You know, it came from my friend's experience with sexual assault, and from it came this beautiful organization. And I gravitated towards this mix of colors because, just like what you said, it's like you think it's like a ruined picture or something. You think it's you think it's like a messy thing, but when you step back and take a look at it, it's something really beautiful. And there's beauty in the messiness and the story and the journey that we all travel through to become the person we're meant to be. And sometimes we just won't learn those lessons until we go through those really hard parts and issues in our lives. So thank you for affirming that and seeing the beauty in the mess. Because we're all broken, right? We're all broken in some ways or another.
Oh gosh. I think that's one thing that I love my job because I would love to be paid full time for my job, but I love my job. I think that, there's the startup life,
Yes.
I think there's something about working I think you could probably say the same in reproductive health or sexuality, sexual issues. It's like, this is such a tender place for people. This is such a tender place for women, such a tender place.
Yep.
And walking with people in their brokenness in this area, it has just humbled me so much. And just seeing like, man, don't we all just have our crap? Like, don't we all? Like, this is just not, and looking at other human beings that perhaps could be labeled unjustly, in other circles, and just being like, oh man, that's my sister. I see myself in her. Like, you got your stuff, I got mine. Let's do this together. And I think it just, working with sexual issues, it really creates this new vision of accompaniment of like what it actually means to walk alongside a person. And I love that about it.
And the importance of community and the importance of like, one of the new phrases that we like to say around here is, we want to be a girlfriend in your medical care. And that's very much what you just said. It's like, how can I support you from another person that identifies very much with what you're going through, and you're not alone. You're not alone. And it can be really scary and shameful. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and just keep going, keep healing, and keep reaching out to beautiful organizations like yours for support. So just thank you for what you do, Rachael.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I
all fun.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I just had a quick meeting with a donor, a very generous donor yesterday, and they're like, "You are always so busy," and I was like, "Oh, I love it." It's so much fun. It's so much fun. I get to do this. I get to talk to folks like you, and I knew this was going to be a 2-part podcast. So I'm going to wrap this one up really quick. And we're going to have Rachael back because we can dive really deep into this. And there's a couple of other questions and a couple of other things I want to peel back with Rachael. But for today, I just thank you so much. Thank you for being vulnerable with us. Thank you for sharing your story.
Of course.
Thank you for being awesome and beautiful and helping the women that you do.
Thank you.
Walk through this really vulnerable time in their life. So thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. All right, listeners, tune in again for the second part about this really tough topic to talk about. It gets me choked up sometimes, but thank you for listening. Thank you for being vulnerable with us. And till next time. For more information about 3W, please visit our website at 3wmedical.org. That's the number 3, the letter W, medical.org. From there, you can learn more information about the services we provide, book an appointment, or make a donation if you'd like to support our mission. You can also call our office at 206-588-0311. That's 206-588-0311. If you like this episode, Please share it with others and consider subscribing on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, stay healthy and be well.